People used to say I had the kindest eyes in Willow Creek, Ohio. Eyes that forgave easily. Eyes that believed too much. I'm Grandma Luna now, 82 years old, rocking gently on my porch, telling this story so my granddaughters don't confuse silence with strength. But once, long ago, I was just Luna Hartman, a woman who trusted love with her whole soul. I had been married to Robert Hartman for 27 years. 27 years of burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings, of folded socks done wrong, of whispered prayers during hard winters. We built our life brick by brick, lie by lie, though I didn't know that part yet. Robert was a traveling contractor. Out of town again, he'd say, kissing my forehead. I never questioned it. Love doesn't interrogate. Love believes. Until one afternoon, love shattered. It was a Thursday in early fall. The leaves had just begun to turn, and I decided to surprise Robert with his favorite pecan pie. He was supposed to be working on a project 2 hours away in Dayton, but something nudged my heart, soft at first, then louder. I drove instead. The address was scribbled on a receipt I'd found in his jacket. A motel, nothing fancy, the kind of place where secrets sleep behind thin walls. I remember my hands shaking as I walked down the hallway. Room 214. I knocked. A woman opened the door. She was young, too young, dark hair pulled into a loose bun, and behind her, standing frozen like a guilty child, was my husband, my Robert. But the worst part? She was pregnant. I'm his wife, she said softly, her hand resting on her belly. My knees buckled. The pie slipped from my hands and smashed against the carpet, nuts scattering like my thoughts. No, I whispered. I'm his wife. The silence that followed was heavier than grief. That's when I learned the truth. Robert hadn't just cheated. He had lived 2 lives, 2 homes, 2 wives, for nearly 10 years. I walked out without screaming, without crying. Shock is quiet like that. I drove home, parked in the driveway we'd poured together, and sat there until night swallowed the sky. When Robert finally came home, he found me at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. I know, I said before he could speak. He tried to explain. Men always do. I didn't listen. Because betrayal doesn't need clarification, it needs consequences. That night, I learned my first life lesson. Love without honesty is not love, it is theft. But this was only the beginning, because what he did next would hurt even more than the secret wife, and what I did after that would change every woman in my family forever. That night, after Robert confessed everything he thought I didn't already know, he slept on the couch. Or, at least, I think he did. I locked our bedroom door for the first time in 27 years. The click of that lock sounded louder than thunder. Morning came, cruel and ordinary. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window like nothing had happened. I brewed coffee out of habit, then poured it down the sink untouched. My hands kept moving, but my heart felt hollow, like a house after a fire. Robert tried to talk. I refused to listen. I was going to tell you, he said, voice trembling. When? I asked. After the baby was born? After I died? He cried. Real tears. Men cry when consequences arrive. He told me her name was Elena. They'd met while he worked out of state. One mistake became a routine. A routine became a second life. He rented her an apartment, paid bills, celebrated holidays twice. He had watched her belly grow while holding my hand at church on Sundays. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not loudly, but permanently. I didn't scream, I didn't throw things, I did something far worse. I went silent. Silence is terrifying because it gives you time to think. I called a lawyer that afternoon, a woman named Margaret Cole, sharp-eyed and calm. She listened without interrupting, slid a box of tissues across the desk, and said, "You didn't lose your marriage, Luna. You lost a man who was already gone." That sentence saved me. The next weeks were torture. Friends noticed I'd lost weight. Church ladies whispered. Robert begged, on his knees once. He promised to leave Elena, promised therapy, promised God. But here's the truth I want you to hear, child. A man who lives two lives will never fully show up in either. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Elena called me. Her voice shook. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't proud. She was scared. "He says he loves us both," she whispered. "But I don't want to raise a child in lies." I realized then that betrayal creates victims on all sides, but healing demands courage. I met her, sat across from the women carrying my husband's child. We cried together, two women bound by the same broken man. That day, I made my choice. Not revenge, not bitterness, but freedom. I filed for divorce. Robert lost everything: his home, his reputation, the comfort of my forgiveness. Elena left town. I never saw her again. Years passed. The pain softened into wisdom. Now I tell my granddaughters this: if someone can love you while lying to you, they do not love you at all. And the hardest lesson? Sometimes walking away is the bravest love you'll ever show yourself. Divorce doesn't end when the papers are signed. It echoes. For months after Robert moved out, I still set 2 plates at dinner. I still listened for his truck in the driveway. Muscle memory is stubborn like that. Grief lives in habits long after love dies. The house felt too quiet. Even the clock sounded judgmental. People in Willow Creek chose sides. Some stopped calling. Others showed up with casseroles and questions they pretended weren't curiosity. At church, I felt eyes on my back. Divorce still carried shame then, especially for women who stayed too long. But every morning I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You survived." Margaret, my lawyer, checked in on me often. She said healing wasn't linear, it was a spiral. Some days you feel strong, other days you're back on the floor crying over a song on the radio. She was right. Then one afternoon, about a year later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a photograph. A baby boy. Dark hair, Robert's eyes. My hands trembled. There was a short note. "His name is Mateo. I told him the truth. I'm raising him alone. I hope you find peace. Elena." I sat down and cried, not from jealousy, not from anger, but from something unexpected: relief. The secret was no longer mine to carry. That night, I burned the last of Robert's old letters in the fireplace. One by one, I watched the lies turn to ash. The smoke smelled like endings. Years passed. I learned to live alone, learned that solitude isn't loneliness, it's space to hear yourself again. I took pottery classes, volunteered at the local library, babysat for neighbors. Slowly, my laughter returned, surprised but welcome. Then came the call I never expected. Robert had a stroke. They said he was asking for me. I drove to the hospital with a calm I didn't recognize. When I entered the room, he looked smaller, fragile. Mortality has a way of stripping arrogance bare. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I wasted you." I held his hand, not as a wife, not even as a friend, but as a woman who had already buried the past. "I forgave you a long time ago," I said. but forgiveness doesn't mean returning. He cried. I didn't. He died 2 days later. At his funeral, I stood quietly in the back. Elena wasn't there, neither was the child, and that was okay. Closure doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just peace. Now, when my granddaughters ask why I never remarried, I smile. I didn't need another man. I needed myself back. And here's the life lesson I leave them with, the one carved from pain and grace. Never shrink to keep a broken love alive. The right kind of love never asks you to disappear. I'm telling you this story now because time has thinned my voice but sharpened my truth. My hands are wrinkled, my hair is silver, and my heart is finally light. After Robert died, people expected me to crumble again. Widows are supposed to mourn, even when the marriage ended long before death. But what I felt wasn't grief, it was release. I sold the old house in Willow Creek. Too many memories lived in its walls, and not all of them deserved to follow me into old age. I moved into a smaller place with a garden out back. I planted lavender and roses, things that came back every year no matter how harsh the winter. Like me. That's where my granddaughters came to know me, sitting at my kitchen table, legs swinging, eyes wide, asking questions only children dare to ask. "Grandma," Luna May once whispered, "how did you survive after Grandpa betrayed you?" I took her hands in mine, slow and steady. I didn't survive because I was strong. I survived because I stopped lying to myself. I taught them lessons no school ever would. That love should feel safe, not confusing. That silence is not peace if it costs your dignity. That staying is not always loyalty, and leaving is not always failure. I told them about Elena, not as an enemy, but as a woman trapped in the same lie. I told them about forgiveness, not the kind that excuses harm, but the kind that frees your sleep at night. Before my health faded, I wrote each granddaughter a letter, real letters, ink and paper, words I sent, not hid away. In mine to you, I wrote this: if someone ever makes you feel small, remember my story. Love never requires you to disappear. Walk away early, walk away whole. That is my life lesson. Not bitterness, not revenge, but this truth, earned the hard way. Your heart is not a place for secrets. Choose honesty, choose yourself, and if you ever wonder whether kindness and courage are worth it, look at me. I lived, I healed, I came home to myself.